feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Friday morning. It's January 3rd. And on today's show, we have Anthony Edwards' sort of bizarre comments about double teams in the locker room last night to get to, and plenty else from the Wolves' 118-115 loss to the Celtics on Thursday night. To get into all that, I have Kyle Theige here with me. Kyle, happy Friday. Thanks for doing it. What's up?
Happy Friday. Happy New Year. I don't even know where to start. I got nothing.
I got nothing. Play the Ant clip?
I got nothing fun. Yeah, just go for it.
All right. So this is Anthony Edwards. If I don't know if somehow you missed this, he was very frustrated about being double teamed, and the entirety of his media session, which was like 6 minutes, was about this. I tried to choose the best 2-minute chunk of it, but if you want to watch the whole thing, he talks for six minutes about being double teamed and the frustrations he's having with that. You can find that on the Timberwolves YouTube page or something. But here's part of Ant last night.
You took one shot but had 5 assists and you guys scored 34 points. Is that kind of the way forward for this right now? To just get up as much as possible?
Hell no. I mean, well, I'm sorry. Is that a cussing word?
No. You can say hell.
Okay.
You're good.
I don't know, man. That was a good brand of basketball, but it's not how I want to play, of course. I mean, I'm only 23. I don't want to just be passing the ball all night. You feel me?
You don't do Conley.
Yeah, at all. But the way that they guarded me, I think I have to. So
I was gonna say, how hard is it to just stay engaged?
Super hard. I mean, because I'm wired to score the ball.
Do you think that's what teams are trying to do to you, mentally trying to take you out of the game?
I don't know. I don't.
You like that?
I mean, that might be a part of it, but I know they're just doing it. Yeah. I don't know if their plan is let's mentally take them out, but because it don't take me all the way out the game, but it definitely frustrates me a little bit. But them doubling me definitely is bro, what is going on? So yeah, I be trying to figure it out, man.
So is it something where you have to just try to get the ball back after you give it up, or how do you?
Yeah, but then I don't want to make it seem like I'm chasing the ball every time, you know.
Right.
But then when I get double and give it up, and then go to the corner and make it seem like I'm just all right, boom, the double team won. So I don't know what to do, honestly. But it's not fun, of course, you know, because I don't want to look like I'm not trying or not as good as I am, you know, because I am, but I can't show it because I'm getting double teamed. You know,
is it a pride thing when you see SGA do what he did the other night?
Yeah, and then Tatum, and then the next team we go play Cade, and then it's definitely frustrating. You know, to see these guys cooking us and I can't cook them because of the whatever the adjustments are.
All right, Kyle. So I got thoughts on that. You and I haven't talked about this yet. What stands out to you?
Let me preface with this, because we were texting last night. Because it was a nationally televised game, I just recorded it, and I was at the gym, so I was running late. So I was an hour behind everyone, as you know, because I strap in, and Wolves Celtics, the second big test for the Wolves this week, right after the OKC thing, and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching that basketball game. They're up by 6 or 7 in the first quarter. And then I think I checked my text, and you were remember the outline text? And I was like, oh, wait, this must go south really, really quickly. So then all of a sudden, they kind of fall apart in the second quarter. They're down at half. Third quarter gets kind of ugly, but then they fight their way back. And then all in all, in 48 minutes, I was like, that was a pretty good basketball game. I actually think if I didn't have the internet, I would have come away from that feeling really good. I thought, yes, there's no Jaylen Brown. Yes, there's no Porzingis, no Rob Dillingham, but that they fought pretty well and learned some stuff, and there were some things that you could really poke at. I mean, Jaden McDaniels had a really good game, and those comments nuked everything. I think, not to be hyperbolic, those are the single worst, most deflating basketball comments he's made in 5 years.
Because they're dumb. It's dumb.
Dane, I am, you know this, you're one of my best friends. I am late for everything. I'm trying to fix it. Family, friends, I'm trying. But I'm just late for a lot of shit. New Year resolution, don't be late for stuff. If I show up to something and I'm late again and everyone else is on time, shut the fuck up. And in a game where a guy, and this was coming, right? And I know he's frustrated. And that man has done a lot for you and I in our careers. I know that's frustration. And
Hold on, let me just talk about the numbers. I don't know where you're going with this. They had it. The reason it's wrong is the Wolves had one of their very best offensive games of the entire season. It was their second best offensive rating of the year. Their other best game was against Chicago. So whatever his frustrations are about this it's just him. The Wolves were playing a great offensive game around him. The guys, not including Ant, shot 19 of 30. Ant shot 2 of 9 from 3. So the Wolves overall shot 53% from 3. The non-Ant guys shot 19 of 30 from 3-point range because they were double teaming Ant. So it wasn't a lack of shooters thing. It wasn't a Julius Randle was playing bad thing. He had 27, 8, and 7. He was 4 of 9 from 2. Julius Randle was 5 of 7 from 3. Like, I don't know what Ant is doing there other than just being selfish. And of course, it's been a frustrating season and stuff, but this isn't his first random outburst after a game. I mean, they had the thing about the officials a couple of weeks ago in a game where it's like, yeah, is he getting a great whistle? No, but it's finding ways to project his anger onto, I don't know. It's really disappointing because the question Jay stated to him there was, you only took one shot in the third quarter, but you had 5 assists and you guys scored 34 points and came back into the game. And he said, that's a good brand of basketball, but I don't want to play that way. Well, that was winning. You know, they were winning that. So that it's just, to me, it's just a huge disconnect from a basketball standpoint of what he's doing. And nobody else talked about it. Everybody else was like, when we asked about Ant getting, doubled or whatever, it was like, Finch was like, he did a good job of getting off the ball. It's just, I don't know if he understands that all players of his caliber get that sort of defensive coverage. It was bad.
The plane I was trying to land is the fact that being late and everyone being on time. On the other side of the court, Jason Tatum got doubled almost every possession in the second half. Mm-hmm. And he was surrounded by Al Horford, who's 2 for 21 from 3 in the last 3 games. Okay, so don't tell me that Tatum had 4 other guys out there. He had a guy named Kata, who when you and Britt did that podcast, I thought it was Kata HD up. So that's on me. Okay, but he did not have 4 otherworldly shooters around him. Jason Tatum got doubled every time and made the right play. Yeah, show the play. 103-100. 6 minutes left.
I'll put it up there because it goes to Kata at the end here.
Right, who is Rudy Gobert for this team, right?
For sure.
But there's no Horford on this possession, but he gets doubled right here. Sets a screen.
Julius Randle switches. Yeah, go ahead.
Switches to Randle. Jaden knows what he's supposed to do. Doubles. Nas doesn't know what he's supposed to do. Easy layup and a dunk. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the whole rant is about the fact that if this happened against the Pistons or the Pacers, maybe I'd get it. But yeah, you said Ant shot what? 2 for 9 from 3? Mm-hmm. So the rest of his teammates shot 19 for 30. I don't need my finance degree to tell me that that's 63%. So I don't get it. In a game where, again, and I was trying to land this plane, this is the same guy that loved the post-game stuff about, Tatum said he's coming after me again, and like, I'm coming for you. This was going to come. Because you posted that whole 6-minute clip or whatever. The quote tweets are terrible. It's 3 million views, and it's a bunch of people being like, wait a second, you were supposed to be one of them. You just gave us the Devin Booker treatment. Why are you doubling me? I'm trying to work on my game.
Right.
Right? Like, that's bad. So if you think it's hyperbolic, you think I'm being, again, I love the kid. But those are the worst comments he's made because essentially, if you want to keep it shorter, Jay said, hey, third quarter, winning basketball, flow, you found something. He's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say on that. I'm not trying to push him out of town. Like, we can have the same energy towards Anthony Edwards as we did against Chris Finch. Chris Finch, who, by the way, closed, and we'll get into this, the entire fourth quarter without Rudy Gobert. Mm-hmm. The entire fourth quarter, I think, without Mike Conley.
Yep.
So guess what? Out of my mentions, Chris Finch didn't lose him the game. Okay? Jaden McDaniels wasn't an eyesore on offense. Had a great game. Julius Randle had kind of like an all NBA performance. Again, I don't know if I love it all the time because sometimes
we'll
the way
talk about that.
he gets to it. But big picture, man, I do think the officials give him a tough whistle. And I do think there are times where it can be really frustrating for him. But he's not the only one frustrated. And I just, this morning, couldn't sleep because I was thinking about it. And I was just like, man, remember that first non-Karl-Anthony Towns game against Indiana in March that you were at?
Mm-hmm.
And at 44. Who started at power forward? Kyle Anderson.
Oh, Kyle touched on that one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Guess who combined for 2 from 11 from 3? TJ Warren, Nikhil, and Nas. Remember when Ant had 51 against the Wizards? Guess who came off the bench? Monty Morris, J-Mac, and Kyle Anderson. Okay? So I have hit my point. Karl-Anthony Towns trade, probably a loss. They got to figure out a long-term way to solve that. Trade deadline's a month from Monday. Some time to figure it out. This is not all because Karl-Anthony Towns is not here anymore. Because Karl-Anthony Towns played 91 games in the last 2 full seasons, and Ant was humming. So I thought the third quarter, when I was an hour behind, was like, holy shit, that's kind of it. That's how they should play, at least for the short term, until that, Ant does so many right things out of the double that it forces other teams to be like, well, maybe we can't double. Maybe they're actually getting power plays every time we put 2 on the ball. We can't do that anymore.
Well, that's the thing that sticks out to me is like every coach. I thought this was actually a funny quote of one of the quote tweets of the thing I put up. This is John Corrales, I think is how you say his name, covers the Celtics. And what he says here is, if a Celtics player started talking like this to the media, Mazzulla might have run in from the back and tackled him. This is wild stuff from Ant, which is just like a joke. But the point behind the joke is like the entire Boston offense is about hopefully drawing 2 onto one of your creators so as to swing it, so as to find somebody else who's wide open. Like in the clip we showed, somebody wide open under the basket for a dunk, or a swing for somebody who's wide open for a 3. The rest of the league, the coaches, and if they were coaching Ant, so people could hate Finch too, they would be like, this is awesome. They're putting 2 on Ant all the time. All we have to do is learn how to move the ball quickly, move without the ball, and finish actions, which is like not an extremely complicated thing to do. But Ant doesn't, what he's saying there, and what I think is he just doesn't get yet, is he just doesn't want to do that. He wants to get buckets. And the thing is like, you can't just opt into that. Teams are going to continue to do this to Ant until he finds a way to make them not do it. Swing it, find Rudy under the basket, like Tatum found Kata in the clip there. Get off the ball, move quickly. If you want to score for yourself, find yourself in space. It's all the things we've been talking about all season. You can work through the post, Ant. It's a lot harder for them to put 2 on you down there if you're on the block. Like, there are other solutions to this other than just, I don't know, it's good adjustments by them, and I'm frustrated by it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and here's the frustrating part. Again, I've fully copped this, Dane. Been a little too defensive of Jaden, whose offense hasn't taken a leap. Although, again, last night, really good performance.
Yep.
Finch having a tough year, right? All that stuff. But last night sucks if you're one of those guys who doesn't want to put some of the blame on Ant. Because, again, Mike Conley played 19 minutes. I think Rudy Gobert only played like the 6th most amount of minutes. Like, they just fed into Ant, Julius, Jaden, Dante, and
Spread
Nas.
Floor, right?
What everyone wants for the starting lineup, right? Yeah. And I hear it all the time. Stop playing Mike. Stop playing Rudy. Play the young guys. Do you think the Boston Celtics wouldn't have triple-teamed Anthony Edwards last night if Terrence Shannon Jr. was out there?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so there is nothing today, and it's 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
So let's also try to take a deep breath. But there is nothing you can wake up today and be like, oh, my narrative was proven right, because it wasn't. Because the team outside of Ant last night was really, really good. 63% from 3 for everyone not named Anthony Edwards. Yeah. They closed without a center. Okay, they played Nas a ton of minutes. They played Dante a ton of minutes. They sat their old point guard down. And I'm just kind of baffled. And again, I'll get over it.
The only narrative that works, that if it was your narrative coming into this before, that you could point to and say that my narrative was correct, was if your narrative was Anthony Edwards' ability to process the game has not grown enough by 23, and and he's not learning the game at the level. And this is what's holding back the Wolves offense. You don't see that out there very often because, well, that's not completely true. We know Ant has made some steps as a playmaker. We saw that in the playoffs last year, of course. And then it's really hard to, to be frustrated about the player who's super fun to watch, electric, a bucket, all these different things. But what's behind this is the fact with Ant that as athletic as he is and as much as he's grown, part of the package of what you got from Ant from day one was limited peripheral vision and understanding of what's going on with him. We saw that his rookie year really, really lost off ball, right? There was, and slowly over time, he got better at his awareness off ball, and his guys stopped cutting around him and getting back cuts and losing his man in all those sort of ways. And in other ways with getting doubles and more attention, he's gotten a little bit better at it, but we got to remember he started so low that I think it was us last week when we were talking about this, like, what would you give him as a grade, as like a playmaker? I said like a C plus, did I say something like that? Mm-hmm. Like, that's just the reality of where he's at mentally in his understanding of combating how teams are going to guard him. Because this wasn't just Boston guarding him this way. Oklahoma City did on Tuesday. Detroit's going to on Saturday. It's the same shit.
But you know what the frustrating part is? And this is like, I'm already getting out in front of it. I'm 2 steps ahead of anyone that wants to criticize this take, because Jace sent him a softball and said in that question, you played the right way. Good job. How did that feel?
Yeah.
And he said it felt bad.
Yeah,
okay, so if he just does, if he just keeps it PG and doesn't swear and just like that's what the coaching staff wants, and I thought we found something, I'd wake up today and glaze. Oh, like just that's how they should play. The third quarter, they fought back against the defending champs, a team that is light years. I mean, no offense, but like even watching OKC, I still think that Celtics team at full strength is in another hemisphere compared to every other team right now. And maybe they take too many threes, but I don't know, man. It's just like you did yourself no disservice. And the only positive way to spin this is that a couple weeks ago, whatever, after that Kings game, Ant like called out the team. And it worked, right? And that was leadership, in my opinion, at like the highest level, and it really turned the knob on like becoming a really good defense. I'm hopeful that this was like him calling himself out, because again, not to just like use Twitter as my Wikipedia here, every quote tweet is shitting on him and being like, oh, so you're not one of the ones that wants all the smoke. Mm-hmm. You're not Michael Jordan. Like, you're Devin Booker saying, don't double team me. I'm working on my game. And it's just a bummer, because I watched the third quarter, man, and I was like, he did it. He only took one shot attempt, which I know is frustrating to him, but he had 5 assists. They found something. All his teammates were empowered, and he didn't like it.
Got back in the game.
got back into a game. It was competitive. He still got the last shot of the game. It was all drawn up for him. That was a tough one. Like, that was a real, and again, and I also know, and you know this because you're there all the time, and the fines and the swear. I mean, the first part of that clip when he said hell and he kind of looked, I mean, I am petty. Like, I know that he's in his own head, right? He said the word hell and he's like, oh, shit, am I going to get fined again? So I get he's frustrated, but everyone's frustrated. And this is part of the, whether you like it or not, Karl-Anthony Towns, like, you are now the face of it. And to that one guy you said, if Tatum ever said that, he would have been nuked online, right? Like, how many other guys say it? Stephen Curry last night, the only reason I'm saying this, it was the second game on TNT, right? Steph Curry last night started a game with Trace Jackson Davis and Draymond Green out there. And he had 30 on 8 for 8 from 3. Right, and we're building this kid up to be like, hey, he's not even in his prime yet. He's done so many things. Those comments suck.
Yeah, let's grab our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino, and we want to let you know that this Sunday night for Week 18 Vikings Lions, like the biggest regular season Vikings game I remember. They're having a live watch party at Treasure Island Resort and Casino. There's free food. If you're there at kickoff, they can do a bunch of prize giveaways. They have drink specials. I believe it's $4 Miller Lights, $5 Absolute Wild Berries. Everything going on the big screen. Kyle, we were there for when we did a Wolves watch party a few weeks back. I think this is, if you're looking for somewhere to go to watch this Vikings Lions game. It's gonna be a fun atmosphere, and you're gonna, they're gonna give you a lot of different stuff. You got deals, you got giveaways, all this stuff, and watch with other Vikings fans there. For more information on the full Island Watch Party schedule, you can visit ticasino.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Coldwell Banker Realty. Let me pull that up here. Right now, Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. We've told you about Adriana for a long time sponsor of the pod, but maybe now you are, as your New Year's resolution, you're ready to buy a house and start that process. And starting the process of buying a new home starts with finding a realtor. And Adriana is licensed in both Minnesota and Wisconsin, which I think obviously many of my listeners are from that area. And I really would just recommend sitting down with her for free. You can set that up by going to the dancingrealtor.com, which is in the show notes, along with her phone number, which is 715-304-9920. Set up that to start the ball rolling on purchasing or buying or selling a home. And if you set up one of those consultations, you'll be entered to win some lower level Wolves tickets to a game from us. So again, that's Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. Go to thedancingrealtor.com for more information.
Can we do one more, Ant? Like, do you have any Finch clip? About talking about offense? Okay, because a break helped. And I was just thinking, my dad watched that game last night and doesn't have Twitter. So he doesn't know what Ant said. So I bet you he woke up today and was like, hey, Ant played the right way. And I'm curious what Finch thought, because in the notes you sent me, one of the things that really stood out was coaches want your best player to get a double team.
Right. Well,
you know what I mean? That's like the other thing that drove me crazy. It's like, Ant, you're getting double teamed and he's just so frustrated. And I get it.
Yeah.
I'm calming down. But it's also like the highest compliment you can get that the defending champs are just throwing two at you every time.
Right. When they have good perimeter defenders,
So I'm curious if Finch agreed with him.
Yeah, there's two different Finch clips. I think I only sent you the generating more from one, but this was just like the first at the beginning of Finch's press conference. He was asked about Ant facing doubles. Finch was kind of like, "Hey, good job."
Putting this stamp on a game.
I thought he did a good job, and when they put two on him, he got off of it and created some good ball movement for us. And you just got to stay ready to go early, ready to catch and shoot.
Did you say anything coming halftime? It seemed like that was really intentional for him in the third quarter. That was probably like his best quarter, and I think he took like one shot as far as getting off the ball.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he's. We didn't say anything to him specifically about it. It's just kind of how they were playing. That's just how it's going to have to be. You got to trust it. He had opportunities, I thought, in the first half. He got downhill, he got to the hoop, late, and I thought he picked his spots real well. I don't think he forced anything.
So again, I know a lot of people are not loving Chris Finch these days, but that is the coach of the team, and obviously very smart basketball mind overall. And he's like, yeah, well, obviously he had to get off of those when you're just throwing two on somebody on the perimeter. Again, like that Tatum play we put up there earlier, like there are no other options there, Kyle. Like what do you do in that situation other than, pass it and, play 4 and 3? There aren't other stars who like go through that. Like we could talk about like it's a pick and roll. Maybe you split the pick and roll because you don't want to like navigate. Like you could go next to your screener and get through there. But when it's just you and two guys out there, like every player is getting off of that there. So Finch was just like, yeah, that's what he had to do there. And because of that, I thought he did a good job and we scored a bunch of points. Like that's what Finch is thinking. So the point is there's a huge disconnect between the star player and what he's thinking and what Finch, the coach, is thinking about the same topic.
I'm going to defend him now, but also criticize him at the same time because Painting did a good job with House and Growls this morning where he shows the last two games. And Ant gets he finds these multiple levels of walls against OKC where there's like two wings and then Hartenstein in the middle and then another wall on the baseline. And a couple of times he kicks it to Jaden in the slot and Jaden misses the three. Right? Yep. Trusts his guy. I mean, Jaden McDaniels is Anthony Edwards' guy, and Jaden misses, or Mike misses, or Julius misses, whatever. And I can imagine after a while that becomes like scar tissue of like, God damn, like if I make the right play, it's probably not, whatever. But then last night, and Jake highlighted this, Ant's, I think it's like early in the second quarter, Ant's triple teamed at the free throw line. And all he has to do is spin back and find Jaden in the other slot. Jaden McDaniels, by the way, who's shooting 50% from three in that game. And he doesn't do it. And there's another one where he doesn't throw it to Nikhil in the corner. And I get the Jaden stuff. But Nikhil in the corner, what's that like? That's like a coin flip right now with how well he's shooting. And he doesn't make that play. So I get that some of the stuff that comes into his brain when it's like, well, last time I made that right play. And that is like what I would imagine is the film session today, or the conversation is like, just because, tell me, like, just because it didn't work the first time doesn't mean it's not going to work this time. And in the flow of last night's game, when everyone is playing really, really well, I don't know. It would have been easier for him to,
I think it's an interesting. I'm kind of glad this is happening after literally playing both the Thunder and the Celtics.
For sure.
From how they play, those teams play standpoint, because we've done this a bunch of times, right? Where I'm like, I've said many times, I think Ant would be a significantly better offensive player if he wasn't playing with Rudy Gobert. What I always reference is I'm like, put him in the same position as Shea, put him in the same position as Tatum or Brown, the 5 out drive and kick game. I'm like, Ant would be awesome at that. That's what I've said for years. And I get why the Wolves don't do that, because they need help on, like, they think the juice is worth the squeeze of having Rudy out there defensively for what he can give you there, whatever. My point is, I leave this game and those comments thinking I'm maybe wrong about that. The idea that Ant would be better in a spread look like that, because you know what happens to Shea and Tatum and Brown and J-Dub, when they're in those situations all the time? You have rotating two guys over for the wall you're talking about at the baseline for that. You might have a big coming over into the middle of the floor, depending on how spaced it is. And you know what you're going to get a lot in that setting? What Shea gets a lot, what Tatum gets a lot, is 2 on the ball. So I don't know, man. It's not just the offensive alignment. It's how Ant is processing whatever the offensive alignment is. Maybe more space would still be good for him, but I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's the solve that maybe I once thought it was.
And we'll, I think, dive into this a little more later in this episode about the Rudy Gobert thing. Doesn't play in the fourth quarter. Celtics kind of play him off the court, or maybe Rudy's own coach just realized that again.
We can do that part now. You want to do that part?
Yeah, but it does tie into the Ant thing, because again, I've thought this for a while. I've heard you say it for a while. I see what the back end of the roster looks like with all these young guys that are kind of athletes that you would have envisioned. I've said this before, but like the next iteration maybe of this team is Ant with a bunch of athletes just getting out in transition and stuff. But I was thinking about what you and Britt talked about the other day in terms of like coaching, that you can either like coach or like have a winning structure or a fun structure, right? Like, well, you got to have one of those two things. You can't be bad and not fun.
Yeah.
That's like the worst combination of them both. In the comments, I hear myself being almost like frightened, because it's like, wait a second, you played the winning basketball last night and you didn't have fun. Yeah. Like, do you want to be the Eastern Conference leading vote getter for guards, LaMelo Ball and the Hornets, where you get a lot of fun, but you never win? Right. And that's why the Rudy Gobert thing, I still see people being like, oh, that was a mistake. It's like, dude, they finally found a winning formula. And last night they got rid of that old point guard and they got rid of the old center. And maybe we can let's talk about right now, like why Rudy wasn't out there in the fourth, just like he kind of wasn't out there to close that Rockets game that they come back in. But man, like, do you want to, they played winning basketball last night in the third quarter, and they outscored the Celtics, the defending champs, 34-29, and came back in a game and had a chance to beat them, which would have been an impressive win. And I continue to just bang my head against the wall that people don't want that to be the way.
Yeah. Let's, so what I think is interesting about the Gobert part is, and I think a major frustration of people watching the Wolves was, how Rudy is getting in the way offensively, which sometimes happens. He's been more fumbly with the ball this season. The middle of the floor catches, he's getting way too many dream shakes, push shots, and he's just not able to do those things. And the thing is he's being held accountable for those behaviors by the coaching staff. They didn't play him the last 15 minutes of the game tonight. And you know who was out on the floor? Nehemias Queta. Like it wasn't
matchup specific. Yeah.
Exactly. It was just, no, we're not going to play you because we want to play more this way with Nas at the 5, and Rudy's being held accountable for that. And they're peeling his minutes away until he better presents himself, or Ant or others find him better. So yes, he's still starting. I don't think any of us would argue like he shouldn't be starting. I think the coaching staff surrounding the quote unquote Gobert issue going on right now, I think they're managing that part of it pretty well, which is why, it makes even less sense with what Ant was saying. But here's Finch on Gobert last night and why I took him out.
Didn't close with them tonight. What has to happen when he's on the floor to generate maybe a little more offense for you guys?
Well, tonight is a tough one just because the way they kind of bastardize the matchup so much, so it's really a game for Rudy to stay down low in a dunker and try to open up some other driving lanes and put other guys into the action where you can get distortion, which is what we did. We put 2 Ant and Julius in it, and they put 2 on Ant, and then, we just talked about that. So, he just has to stay patient, crush him on the offensive glass, and then when he has opportunities to find good screens in the flow, he has to do that.
So that's holding one of your star players accountable of like, hey, look, in this matchup, and what he's talking about by bastardizing the matchup there
Great
was
word.
Drew Holiday was guarding Gobert. That's that's how they matched up in this game. They put Horford on Randle. Here, let me pull those up real quick. They put Horford on Randle, Tatum on Edwards, Hauser on Conley, Derek White on Jaden McDaniels, and Drew Holiday guarded Gobert with kind of the purpose of daring the Wolves to try to play through Rudy in the post or whatever, which they didn't. There was no like post entries into Rudy because he's got a 6'4" guy on him. What he had to do, as Finch said, and I agree with this, is like you got to give me like 8-9 offensive rebounds then in this situation if you're going to be playing there. And he didn't find screening actions within the flow. He's just kind of like out there. So Finch goes, all right, we're going to go with our lineup that we're going to try and score with them rather than slow them down. And they did. No, they scored with them by going to that Reed, Randle front court. And we'll talk about that bench group too, with Minot, Nikhil, and Dante next to him too. And so I get the frustration with Gobert, just like I got the frustration with Randle earlier. And I think you can be mad at Finch for maybe some delay or being slow on these things.
For sure.
But you know what I'm saying? Like the Randle thing, like he made a change and he found a lineup that's better for Randle. And that was about, go back to like the New York game, right? Like look up Julius's numbers since the New York game when he started playing with the second unit a bunch. Good adjustment. They found that there. He's holding this accountable with Rudy, like Finch's good adjustment there, right? Like, so I'm just not sure you could point at Finch, Randle, and Gobert, right? Like it can't be all of their fault while they're making some adjustments there, particularly if you're not willing to give Ant any sort of blame.
Yeah, I'm kind of done with the Finch stuff because I've really come around to a honest opinion that he was the person who was planning a holiday meal for months and everyone was coming over, and then like 2 days before someone texting like, hey, we're all gluten-free now. And he's like, fuck, I have so much bread. And he's just trying to figure it out. Like I believe that when he did 2 hours with Britt Robson that he was planning on having Karl-Anthony Towns be his power forward, and he had all these different ideas to try to run it back. And now he's just like us. And that's probably why he's late to some stuff that I just don't think he was late to in the first 3.5-4 years of coaching this team. But again, the reason I sound so frustrated is because last night, the anti-Finch, what did he do last night? He just played the guys that made shots. And he sat the guys. One thing that I know we're talking about Rudy, but I always kind of think of like Rudy and Mike in the same vein a little bit. if you go look at like team stats last night, the Wolves just kind of wiped the Celtics from every stat, like rebounds, free throw attempts. I think it was 22-6 in the Wolves' favor, 50%. The one that really just stands out when I look at it is turnovers. And this is a little bit Rudy too, but like 16-4, the Wolves like had 16 turnovers. And it's because the Celtics just hounded the Wolves backcourt and just forced them, like we kind of identified in that Portland series, of these teams have no respect for anyone that brings the ball up. Even last night, Jaden McDaniels got stripped from Sam Hauser in a full court press. So, and some of that stuff back to the Rudy thing is, you know, Rudy with these turnovers, Rudy with these bad finishes of like these push shots. And I think they are holding him accountable. I mean, I think if Keda for the Celtics had a 14-foot jumper late in the shot clock against Al Horford like Rudy did last night, they would have just said, no, like we're a title team. You're done. Come sit down. Mm-hmm. And the Wolves kind of did that with Rudy. Like they tried to hold him accountable, a guy who has predominantly led to winning and done what you wanted, right? He had 10 or 11 offensive rebounds the other night. Mm-hmm. And he didn't last night, so they sat him. But that's, again, comes back to the Ant frustration, or my frustration with those comments is that last night they kind of did everything you would want, right? Like they played just a ton of Nas and Julius was great. They played a ton of Dante. And it worked. And you
can I say one Rudy thing?
Yeah.
I wanted to let you finish that point there. But to the turnover thing, I know you're talking like you were pointing at the 16 turnovers side of it. The Wolves committed 16 turnovers.
Yeah.
They only generated 4.
Correct.
And they didn't play Rudy Gobert as much in this game. Like there's a corollary there, right? And even like the first year, the Wolves generated a ton of turnovers defensively. And I remember we dug into this all the time in those seasons, particularly last season as well. Like the plan, when the Wolves defense is like clicking, the plan is the other 4 guys like are attacking perimeter defenders, right? You are playing passing lanes. You are pursuing steals the ball, right? It is a very aggressive one-on-one coverage that, you know, when you're playing really aggressive defensively, this isn't complicated, right? Like sometimes the guy's going to get you with the move. Like if you're reaching for it, they cross you, like they're going to go.
Yeah.
and the Wolves were like cool with that because when the guy would go, Rudy was there at the rim. You know, that's what made the Wolves defense elite, but specifically what made the Wolves generate a bunch of turnovers. Rudy might not be a high steals guy, but the reason that Ant has a lot of steals or Conley has a lot of steals or McDaniels has a lot of steals was because Rudy was back there defending him, allowing them to be more aggressive. So I get why they didn't play him. He wasn't able to do anything against the Holiday matchup, which is just like, it's just sad that Rudy can't do anything offensively down there. But let's not pretend there's not an opportunity cost to him not being on the floor in the game, dude. This was their worst defensive rating game of the season. And the other one was the Knicks, again, where they didn't play Rudy as much because I know people are frustrated with Gobert, and I get it. I'm frustrated there too. I'm like, oh my God, do not spin and float and fade and take that. Like, obviously, right? But when you don't have them out there, the other team scores. That's a fact. Like every number ever, puts that there. So that's part of the Gobert conundrum too. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, I'm not even pushing back. I'm just going to give you one extra stat, and I want to know if it changes your opinion on this, because we also are kind of hammering a team that has been frustrating all season long, but we're hammering them after they come off against a 3-point loss against a team that I think, we don't have to get into this, but I think is playing the best basketball and has the best roster since those Warriors days. No offense to the Nuggets with Jokic, no offense to the Raptors with Kawhi, but like this Celtics team is about as dynasty level-esque as those Warriors teams were.
Dude, it's what you said. It's like we would have came on and been like, here were a lot of good things that happened in this game had Ant not lit up.
I'm not checking Twitter anymore. I would have been so much happier. But I just want to your Rudy thing. To your Rudy thing on the 16-4 turnovers, I'm just asking you, because in most other games, I would have just blindly agreed, but I'm just curious. Last night, the Celtics, 63% of their shots were threes. 57 of 92. Like 57 of their 92 shots were threes. Does that one game change a little bit of like all the stuff you talked about, like kind of forcing them and Rudy's there they didn't even go to the rim. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. I'm sure opponents shoot more threes, right, when Rudy's in the game.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I guess he's out there. I think, I don't know, the Celtics are weird.
That's what the Celtics are weird, but your point stands. I'm just saying last night was like no Rudy or Rudy.
Yeah.
Dikembe Mutombo could have been at the rim, and they were going to shoot 57 threes.
Yeah, I guess to continue to connect it to what I was saying of the turnovers thing, maybe if Rudy's out there, the other four guys are playing up more. Maybe they're not generating turnovers, but they're running guys off the line, right?
Yep.
Like the scouting report for the game was they wanted to run Derek White off the line and they wanted to run Al Horford off the line. That was the plan. Did they do that? No. And that's why part of the reason why Boston shot many percent of their shots from three. Boston's are always going to get up like
45 at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, so I don't know. It's just maybe I'm just pouring gas on like, this is a problem, but here's another problem that's related to this problem, which is also, that's just the story of the Timberwolves season, because it's a roster that forces you to go down some different paths and run into walls there, because their best three players, Randle, Edwards, and Gobert, have a lot of walls in their game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this game highlighted a lot of the walls that Ant and Rudy specifically have. And maybe grab another break here, we could talk about Randle, who actually, it was a weird one because I wasn't loving it at first, the Randle game, but in the aggregate, we can't be that frustrated about it. I'm excited to talk about Randle. We'll grab another break here, though. Today's show is brought to you by Doer Jeans, D-U-E-R, my Doer Jeans. I wore them to the game last night. I have a black pair of them that I wear all the time. They're super comfortable. They got like that stretch to them that make it feel like you're wearing wearing formal pants, but they feel like you're wearing something much more comfortable. I gave them as Christmas presents to some people, and I was talking to many of you, or talking to everybody to you on here about giving them as gifts as well. But I really would recommend trying them as a gift to yourself. And just try out one pair. Go to shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. I really think you're going to love these. And for that trial, for that first pair, you get 20% off. My listeners get 20% off for their first purchase when you use my exclusive URL, shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. This really is such a great deal. Don't wait to get 20% off now by going to shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. All right, Kyle. Let's move over to Randle's game here, and I also want to relate it to the bench and how that bench and Randle group, they didn't save the day last night, but they almost did again. And we've kind of been on this from when they started doing it. This shift in Randle playing with the four bench guys within the rotation is really generating a lot better individual play from Julius Randle. Happened again last night. They get that group out there with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. The Randle, Reed, Minot, Alexander Walker, DiVincenzo group, and they're down by 11. I got to pull this up. It was 76-87 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. 5 minutes later, that group's in the entire time. The score's 94-94. This happens all the time. Has been happening all the time. Stuff like this, where the starters dig themselves some sort of hole. Again, probably because of that little maze wall thing that they're running into with Edwards and Gobert and Randle when they all play together. But this group has found it. And a big part of this group is, yes, we've circled it, we've highlighted it, we've loved it. The main three bench guys, Alexander Walker, DiVincenzo, and Reed, are awesome individually as bench players, even better as a collective trio for a bench group. Randle has not only fit well into that, but is playing really well within that group. So I want to give him credit for that. He was a part of that comeback that even made this a game. He also scored a bunch at the beginning of the game in the first quarter. I think he had 15 points. And it really reminded me of the New York game. Remember that? The last TNT game that they were on. And the first quarter is good. Like Julius is rolling, and I think he had 13 or 16 in the first quarter. of that game, and you're like, okay, efficient, effective offense. But in both of these games, it was really hard for Ant or Gobert or anybody else to get going after Julius starts that sort of way and then kind of continues to play that way for the rest of the game, unless he's out there surrounded by the bench. So it's this weird conundrum where I don't want to come on here and, rip on Julius Randle, who had the best stat line last night, was a part of the best lineup that made this even a game. Yet I feel that too. And I don't know if that's me just not liking the aesthetics of Julius Randle's game or whatever, but that's something, right? Like when he starts going like that, the rest, it's hard for the other main scorer guys to get going with him, or any of the other main scoring options outside of that bench group.
I'm going to need you to help me with this segment, because I watched that game, a game where Julius Randle is the only starter to finish plus 10, 9 for 16 from the field, 5 for 7 from 3, got to the line 4 times, 27, 8, and 7. And I just didn't really like it. I didn't come away from it, and this is just how my stupid brain works, but I just kind of reminded me of, like, with Julius Randle, who has been All-NBA and has been a multi-time All-Star. It's kind of reminded me of, like, if you were running like a Muse account or like NBA Centones, like, you're getting all this engagement, but that's not how you're going to make it in sports media. Like, that's you know what I mean? Like, you run a Muse account, you don't put your name on, you don't put your photo on, you're not going to actually make it anywhere. You're just going to get a bunch of engagement. And with Julius, that's a really harsh criticism for a guy who actually played well. But I thought the same thing. I was like, man, he's cooking in the first, and it's a lot of back down. Like the better result of what happened against J-Dub, which was the highlight of the night the other night, when he was just going 3 different times, banging his head into a wall. J-Dub gets the steal. Ant looks at it and just walks back on defense. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. And in the bronze lineup that you've coined with the DNA, which I do love, Dante, Nikhil, and Naz.
Get Minot in there. We get some mRNA.
Yeah. And Josh was great again last night. And I'm really happy for him, because I don't know, like they said on the broadcast last night, Josh Minot out of Memphis, this is year 4 for him. He's got to be pretty frustrated too. Like, maybe he doesn't like the way that they're playing. But and I'll be done with this, but it kind of reminded me of another food analogy of, like, if the 3-course meal that you had was bad, but the dessert was kind of good, is that going to make you a good restaurant? And with the playoffs, do you think come playoff time, wherever this team may see it, because I still think they're a playoff team at some level, is that the best thing you want 3 months from now? That the best thing you have, other than being pretty good defensively, is that Julius Randle and 4 bench guys are like your best 5-man lineup?
No, okay. No, right. That, like, it's not going. That wouldn't work for. It isn't going to work for a playoff setting to have 2 different ways of playing, and Randle being, a part of both of those. But I want to ask you just specifically to the Randle part. Do you think your dislike of Randle's game is what he looks like with the starters just being louder? Like, what do you think of what he looks like when he's with that group? Like, I feel like I kind of like Julius Randle and see the value of Julius Randle when he's surrounded by 4 guys and they're playing the Oklahoma City 5-out way, or they're playing the Boston 5-out way. They're like, I think I see good Julius Randle in that. I see bad Julius Randle in the starting lineup too. And sometimes, like last night, he scores. But are you not making the same distinction that I did?
I'm not trying to answer everything with an analogy, but like, I play basketball twice a week, and like, you play with guys that just can fill it up, but they do it in such a way that everyone else is miserable. And we're coming off of me saying that analogy too. We're coming off of playing, like, me saying those are the worst basketball comments Ant's ever made. He seems really frustrated this year. I've poked holes in some of the, it's all because there's no Carl, when it's like he hooped without Carl. So then I come back to, like, it might just be the aesthetics. It might be the process to get those results. Just, to me, is not, that's kind of what Britt says. Like, I just don't think that's a profitable way to play basketball anymore. And when I watch him with those 4 other bench guys, and I've kind of coined him like he's the quarterback one of that, I don't know, like, maybe this, I know you said the Mike Conley conversation the other day, and I don't know if we're doing that today, but like, why can't he play like that with is it because, like, he doesn't have 4 spacers around him? Why can't he do that with the starters?
Well, I think he has limited processing ability in those times too, and goes to it. like, and just when it is in a less spacious setting as it is with Rudy Gobert sitting in the dunker and Jaden McDaniel sitting in the corner, he gets more tunnel vision into isolation against his guy and tries to go score at his guy. It was the same thing in New York, man. Like he started next to Mitchell Robinson, who obviously, is Rudy Gobert, right? Offensively, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those Knicks teams would often have a Jaden McDaniels level shooter out there with him too. So Randle played this way largely for many years in New York. And it was aesthetically tough. It was probably too isolation heavy at times. And he still often had a lot of games like last night, 27, 8, and 7.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say was not like a winning to the highest level brand of basketball. What I'm opening up my mind to, and this is definitely being like rose-colored glasses, glass half full, but if this team is committed to, Julius Randle beyond the trade deadline this season, which I think is a possibility you had to think about just given some limitations, or maybe even that he's on the team next year, what is the way that you have to play with Julius Randle as one of your highest usage players? I think you have to be in a spread floor look. And even if he goes to another team, if another team goes and gets him, it should be in a spread floor look. And I think you're just going to get a better Julius Randle in that process of playing that way. The problem is in Minnesota, as this roster is constructed, as it was in New York, the main guys, given the roster construction, are never going to play that way. Rudy cannot shoot threes. Jaden is not going to be an above average spacer. He's not going to get the respect. I mean, shout out Jaden, made 4 of his 8 threes last night, 19 points, was not guarded in that game.
Yep.
So this isn't a fun conversation, but if Julius Randle's on the team next season, it needs to be, to me, it needs to be in more of a spread look, because if you keep playing the starters with this group, like, it's just never going to be a good offense. It never will be. They could probably get better, and they probably will get better of how that 5 is playing offense now. And then they need to be elite defensively, which Julius is not an elite defensive player. It's a bad setting for him. In my opinion, there are better settings for Julius Randle, at least as an offensive player. And we're seeing that in this bench group that he's playing with. The conundrum is the starters aren't going to play that way.
I'm putting you on the spot here. I don't know if you have these numbers up, but when you say Julius Randle looks the best with the spread, style and 4 guys around him, do you include Anthony Edwards in that?
Yeah, I think there's. I like that group when it's the group we're talking about there. That was Randle, the 3 bench guys, and Minot. Edwards plays in Minot's place a lot of the time. That's what they get to in that rotation. Also has excellent numbers. I think Reed, Randle, Alexander Walker, DiVincenzo, and Edwards is a really good lineup for Julius Randle. So yes, I do think Randle and Edwards can coexist to some extent. I'm not saying win a championship, like we're lowering the bar here, but like within the context of this team, I think that can be a good lineup. Edwards and Randle out there together with a non-shooting center and a below average 3-point shooter. If you put even one of those into the equation, that's going to be a problem. But if you take both of them out of the equation, I think you'll get pretty good offense with Julius Randle out there and Ant.
This is more eye test or just memory than it is anything else. But I always think that when they do replace Josh's minutes with Ant, that it doesn't work as well as we think, because if Ant is
numbers say it does, but that's fair. It's totally fair. I'm just throwing that out there.
No,
and
I need that.
It doesn't look as good. Yeah,
I need that because I'm trying to come back to all I really care about for this hour is those comments post game. That's just what I'm going to care about. And if Anthony Edwards is tired of being double teamed and just wants to shoot because he's not a passing guard, he's a shooting guard. I mean, in that lineup with Dante, Nikhil, Naz, and Julius, why can't Ant just literally mimic how Dante plays basketball? Constantly moving, spacing, hitting threes. I mean, that would solve the frustration, would it not? Because Julius is the one that's playing quarterback 1 and is getting double teamed. So wouldn't that just open things up for Ant? But again, and if the numbers say that they work, then maybe we have found something, and lean even more into that, even though you still got to mow the grass every game now for 10 to 12 minutes. But I haven't seen that be as profitable, but if the numbers bear it out, then I'm all with you. It's just that would be a solution, because when Julius Randle does play, they do throw double teams at him, and it's like, okay, Dante's found it in the last 5 or 6 or 7 games. Like, he's playing like Dante, and I think Dante is the perfect player to close games with next to Ant. But tell me what the numbers say on the screen.
So you just look at these are the Wolves' most used lineups, right? The very most used lineup is the starting 5. It's one of their worst lineups. They have a net rating of plus 4.3. Their second most used lineup is the one we're talking about with Ant, Julius, and the 3 bench guys. Has a net rating of plus 20.5 and an offensive rating of 130.6, which is 1.3 points per possession. Think about that. Like, really, really good offensively. They've held their own actually pretty good defensively, and that is a plus 20.5 net rating with that group that we're talking about. Again, when the starters are plus 4.3. You scroll down here a little bit further to the Minot one, not as many minutes here, but they have a net rating of plus 30.7 when it's Reed, Randle, Minot, Alexander Walker, and DiVincenzo. So basically, any time that it's Randle, the bench 3, and a guy, it's awesome. And if it's Ant, it's awesome. If it's even Josh Minot, the 9th man, it's awesome. And it's because, in my opinion, if you put Julius Randle in the game in a spread floor look with really competent surrounding role players who are also good at playing in a spread look, you're going to play at a minimum really good offense. And they are. And the sample is getting big enough, for all of that screams that that's true. Would I have concerns about that in a playoff series, to your point, and some of those different things? Yeah, for sure. But it's working. It's working when Randall's out there in a spread floor, and it's working when he's out there with Anthony Edwards and a spread floor as well. It's not.
If you've never gone to Dane's YouTube page, go to it now, because this is like fascinating to me, because I don't really look at this stuff all the time. But the 55-minute mark, Dane has all the numbers up on the screen, and the one that stands out to me, because I do kind of want to at least go 2 minutes on this, is Ant, Dante, Jaden, Randle, and Gobert minus 17.5.
Yes, exactly. That's my point. Is once you start injecting non-shooters into that group and can't play spread, it's terrible. That's the worst lineup by a mile. Minus 17.5 is fucking awful. That's awful.
But, and help me out with this. I think I really do think Mike Conley needs to not start anymore. Not because he's the full problem, but because he's the easiest lever to pull. But I would throw Dante into that as my first idea to start, and those 5 guys don't work.
Yeah,
that's the worst plus minus on the whole screen right now. Which again, people are going to think I'm pandering, and he's hurt. I don't know. That's why it would be Rob to me, even though he's done nothing. And so far for this team, it's just, I think at some point we've now figured out that Julius and those 4 bench guys work, and now you're showing me that Julius and Ant and 3 bench guys work. Okay, Julius Randle, and I know this, and Britt knows this. Julius Randle's a better basketball player than we're giving him credit for, and he came in and replaced a guy that a lot of people loved. But he does do things well, and you're doing a great job of highlighting what he does well. But I look at this, and I'm just like, I can't do the starting lineup anymore. It can't be like we have, the trade deadline is February 6th at the month from this coming Monday. A lot of big decisions need to be made in this next month, and I think we're going to talk about it a lot coming up. But I want a starting lineup change immediately, and I would have done the one that's the worst on the board.
Yeah. So again, this is what I'm trying to find the better analogy of like the maze where you just keep running into different walls, and I think the roster construction of this team is going to put you in a situation where you continually, run into some walls, and you're going to find some things. But yeah, like, again, those lineups that they leaned into last night, they scored like crazy. Again, it was their second best offensive game of the season last night. They were not able to hold them. They were not able to hold Boston, and so again, I said it before, like there's an opportunity cost of Gobert. It sucks that it's so vast, that it's like it totally, if you put Rudy in there, they go from being elite offensively, to poor offensively. And then, you kind of invert that and okay, it's Reed and Randall out there and you've got this awesome offense, but if it's that you're playing against a good offensive team, that group's not going to be able to really hold them either. So, I don't know. I mean, it's just, unfortunately, I think it's the reality of like this team is, as currently constructed, not up to snuff when it comes to competing with these most elite teams in the league.
On the starting lineup stuff, though,
Yeah,
because people are listening to this and rolling their eyes that I'm trying to start the 19-year-old on a Western Conference Finals team. But you just showed me really good data that says throwing Dante in as a starter over Mike, those 5 guys don't really work.
Well, it was also, I mean, it's also not like a gigantic sample, and
for sure,
and how much of that samples from the beginning of the year when we know that Dante was really struggling individually, personally, the trade, like.
But he's the guy I don't want to fuck up his
Sure.
momentum. You know what I mean? Like he's in my mind right now, maybe the most productive player outside of Julius Randle over like the last 2 weeks.
Sure.
Like he's found it. So I kind of want to keep that come off the bench, but you play starters minutes thing.
So then you could go to Nikhil starting instead of him for Mike. But
now we're in Portland.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like now we're in Portland getting pressed 48 minutes and you're speeding up Nikhil, who Nikhil has probably been the best overall, most valuable player on this team this year. Or had just
most consistent at least. Yeah.
Most consistent. And now you're asking him. So again, this Rob thing isn't because I'm trying to get the next generation to like me.
He's also injured.
No,
right?
I know that, but I also am starting. We are getting to the point where for the first 25 games of the season, I preached patience, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But now we're starting to get to like this. I mean, you're unfortunately, and I told you this the other day, like you're probably going to be inundated with the next month of trade stuff, and I don't even know how trades work anymore. But if we're getting closer to the line for me of if you really did think when you made the Carl trade 48 hours before media day that this might just be a gap year internally, then I just need to see what Rob specifically, even if it eats, can do.
But that's why I don't think they did view it to be a gap year. They did it.
But it's okay. But if
but a gap year where we're not going to play the rookie and you're going to play the new guy who's a worse fit and run your offense to Julius Randle, I mean, it just doesn't.
For sure,
it's not gap year behavior. Maybe it's the front office making a trade for a gap year and a coaching staff not playing the team like it's a gap year. But I don't think that was their vision. I think it was knew they had to get off of the Carl contract or thought it was a good idea to get off of the Carl contract for future reasons. This was the best offer that they could get. They thought they got a real piece in DiVincenzo and they got a first round pick. Yeah. And then we're like, hey, I keep saying opportunity cost, but that works here too. But hey, Finchy, the opportunity cost is we're going to be bringing back Julius Randle and he's going to have to start for you. Can you make this work? And he's like, yes, I can envision a world where I can do that. I've coached Julius there. And I think it will be, as Finch often says, like a pretty seamless fit. He said the same thing about Rudy, in year one, and that was misguided. It wasn't a pretty seamless fit. And I think that's then Finch said it on the record, if that's what Finch's view was, that it would be relatively easy to fold in Randall into an effective team, that's proving not to be correct. He's learned how to fold into Randall effectively in one specific way, which maybe that's an achievement, but it's not. I don't think it's the premise that they made this trade on. That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just going to plant this in your head talk to someone smarter than me, but on the prize of the trade thing or the piece in that trade, if you take out like all star players, right, and then you actually factor in money too, because it's a salary cap league, I think Dante DiVincenzo was like built in a lab to play next to Ant. And I think that was a piece that, I really do love watching those two play together because they feed off of each other. I think Dante finding his shooting stroke, that's when Ant has fun, right? They're doing the D'Lo point at the arm thing. So I think that works. But just one more thing on the gap year stuff of whether or not they intended it to be a gap year or whatever. If I graduate in May and I'm like, I'm not taking a gap year, and it's December and I'm not in college, I might be like, hey, it's a gap year. So I don't know how many more games we can go into this running your head into the same wall, the same, corner of the maze with these starters or whatever. And be like, well, we're not doing a gap year. We're not just going to let all the young guys play. Okay, but if we're at the 50 game mark and you're 500 and your offense is 22nd in the league, you might just have to take the gap year because you don't have a job. And again, Rob's hurt, so he can't play, right? And he's got to get back out there. But it's an interesting conundrum because that one trade has set up all these dominoes where I do think if like one or two pieces move, I mean, the Julius Randle thing with the bench guys is like the perfect analogy of they made one little tweak and all of a sudden like that's super profitable.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, and maybe you're so close to it, maybe I'm so off base on this, but I think there's like a couple more little levers if they pull and the floodgates would kind of open. And maybe that's offensively, defensively, whatever. But I also don't know what those are because it's like, okay, Mike, I'm sorry you can't start, but the Dante numbers, albeit small, are bad. And Nikhil, you just don't play as well when you start. So I don't know.
Yeah, and so maybe,
yeah,
there could be some guess and check, that they.
But this coaching staff I don't think does that, right? I mean, like,
yeah, and I think sometimes when they have guessed and checked, it hasn't worked.
Yep,
I mean,
I agree with that. Yeah, for sure,
like
absolutely.
Last night too, like that's part of guess and check in general. I don't know. I think it's going to take a hell of a lot for Finch to change it because it's really hard for me to see him not wanting. I think the adjustments that Finch will make will not be to the starting lineup. It will be to tweaks around the starting lineup, or it will be not closing with Rudy and Mike like he did last night, or finding a way to play Randle with that bench group. We can talk about starting lineup changes that we would make. And we've both suggested the DiVincenzo for Conley. My point is like, I want to see Mike Conley be a productive, helpful part of this. And I don't think he's in a role to really be able to do the stuff that he's still good at in the starting five, because the starting five doesn't have room for a point guard anymore because Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards are both heliocentric players. So Mike is resigned to be a corner 3-point shooter in that group a lot of the time. Right. And, and he's happened to not be shooting as well this season. I think part of that's like a rhythm thing, but like that is not the maximum. That is not maximizing Mike Conley at all. That is marginalizing and probably minimizing Mike Conley. So my reasoning for saying it, I'm trying to get in my head of like a pathway that Finch could convince himself into, because we could sit here and be like, oh, I would do this, I would do that. Like, being as it's been 33 games and it seemed kind of, we've been saying this for so long, I don't think it matters what we say anymore. It's more like, what are logical tweaks to your point, what you're talking about, like the Randle switching into this group that Finch might go to. And maybe there are one or two more of those that they can click into, and the floodgates open. I just hope Finch is open-minded to pursuing those, open-minded to a guess and check approach, and be willing to guess, check, fails, go back to it. Like, that's the thing, is you could take Mike out of the starting lineup for a month and you could go back to him. You go back to it. Like, I
think he's the only one you could do that though. With
sure, and that's why I've said he's the only one I would take out of the starting lineup,
because I don't think you can take Anthony Edwards out of the starting lineup. I think if you take Jaden, you risk losing him, and that sucks. And you can be like, well, he makes too much. Like, I get it all. I'm just saying that's just what I think. You take Julius out and put Nas in there. Have fun looking at that February 6th on your calendar. And then if you take Rudy out, I mean, you just signed him to a 3-year extension, and he's the guy that we just did a big thing on about. He still does lead to winning. Like, he still does a lot of defensive stuff. So, and with Mike, I should clarify, I don't want him demoted. I just want him reorged.
Yeah, right, yeah. Repositioning his 26 minutes a game into a bench role, which is like what Nikhil gets, yeah.
Right, but then you pull that lever, and it's like, okay, so Mike's coming off the bench, but I have this bench lineup that's nailed. So,
that's the question: is could you put Mike into that bench group? Like, literally, you do the rotation like you do every single game, and instead of the, DNA group, it's Mike DMA, right? Or DCA.
Mad.
Yeah,
MAD.
yeah, damn.
Sounded like
like
Cat.
I do believe that could work. I do like I
do.
think
Yep.
I think Mike could fit into that because he could shoot. I think Mike could play faster. I think we think of Mike as a slow, or he would need to flip that switch of like, hey, I'm playing faster now. I think we think of Mike as being such like exclusively a slow player because he's literally only played with Rudy Gobert for like the last 7 years. You know, like you're gonna play slower there. You're gonna wait to play pick and roll. You're gonna wait to do those sort of things. It would be interesting. It'd be worth the guess and check to me just to see, can Mike play that way still?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then that's why if there were to be a change, that would be the one that I would make, and it's the one I could most realistically or most reasonably see in my understanding of how Finch's brain works, how they could get to that.
I'll close it down, but this is I think doing this enough with you that when you have a 500 basketball team, and that's what this is, you typically still are more critical or you like point at things that aren't working when you're 500. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think we've done a good enough job on this, myself included, of maybe next week. Like, I think Dante DiVincenzo, to 10 minutes ago, has been the piece. Like, he's playing really good basketball. Mm-hmm. And I think there should be a deeper dive on that at some point of there are a lot of things that aren't working. And we did 30 minutes on Julius, but Carl is having an all-NBA year or whatever. But the pieces they've gotten back, in my mind, are good basketball players. And they're starting to figure out, at least with Dante and Julius and the bench guys, like how to use them more. But I just don't think they've found a way to acclimate them into, even on the call last night.
Important stuff, yeah.
Yeah, like even on the call last night with Kevin Harlan and Stan Van Gundy, they were talking about, you know, we talked to Chris Finch and they were telling Julius, again, kind of the same stuff we heard in game 2 against the Kings of like, we'll fit around you. And I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, sure.
Because the other 14 guys, the other 13 guys made the Western Conference Finals. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why we would then pivot to, I mean, Julius Randle has a usage rate right now, and they depend on him to a level that I am convinced he's going to be on the team next year. And we'll see what happens, but they're going to have to figure some more of that stuff out, and I think whether it's a starting lineup change, which everyone, and myself included, now wants, or more rotation tweaks, the gap year analogies, hate them or love them, like, we are getting to a point now where I think it's insanity. You talked about with Bert, like doing the same thing over and over again. It's insanity now. Like we are at that. We have enough sample size with some of this stuff to be like, are you going to keep doing the same?
And the answer to that, I think, is yes. Somebody it was before the game. He did pre-media availability. Sorry, I didn't clip this, but what Finch said was sometimes you need to give some time for the cake to bake. So I think he's still in. That's a very Finch using a Kyle, going like Kyle that. Right there. Yeah, I think you like the analogy. I don't think you like what the analogy implies, which is this isn't going to stop. Like it is going to, I think they are going to keep waiting a while.
But if one of the ingredients in the cake mix is expired or stale or you forgot yeast, you can just sit there and stare at the oven all day. But that's kind of where I'm at, is like, did you put all the right ingredients into the bowl to make the cake? And I don't think they have.
And I don't know. And, you know, maybe the next game, maybe this is Ant's comments or whatever are the straw that breaks the camel's back or whatever. But Finch literally said that before the last game, or that before the Celtics game. So that's why I would be surprised if a change would come. And I would assume if a change does come, because they're like, hey, this isn't work. Somebody's like, hey, this isn't working. Got to make a change. I'm not sure it would be his call. And that's never how, you know, this team has worked. Like Finch has been the president, dictator, whatever. Like he's run everything and gets, you know, final call on it. And I'm assuming that's still very much how it works. And that's his opinion on it. So, well, we can talk about this stuff. I don't know. I would prepare yourself for the idea that it's probably not going to change, and you know, operate accordingly, like curtail your viewing accordingly. Like I think they're committed to the cake baking in this sort of way, and we can disagree with this. And I know a lot of people want people like myself and you to get really, really angry about that. And this is all I can do for you is say what I think is going on.
This is it. 9-6 though in the last 15.
Sure.
And all 15 games, I think I have this right, against teams at or above 500. So this has been a pretty negative one. Again, I didn't like the comments. I still love the kid. I love the player. I think, it wasn't pretty after that Kings game, and it was pretty dicey in that locker room, and they built off it. So I'm curious now because the schedule, something I don't like doing anymore because I just don't, this team doesn't reflect or respect the schedule. It does open up, right? And you went 9-6 against the toughest stretch of your schedule. Go look it's the toughest stretch. And they're kind of back into 500 basketball, but there's things now that when they were 500 in early October or early November, they didn't have a bronze lineup. They had nothing.
Sure.
Right? Like there's at least some things now I think you can start to try to build some little foundation or little houses on, but it's going to be interesting because again, this is my last comment, like a week or on Monday, the 6th, it's a month from then that the trade deadline happens.
Yeah.
And with all the ownership stuff that probably will drop later this month and like all the other dominoes this team has long term, it's going to get way more interesting and possibly better or possibly worse than it has been the last couple months. So,
yeah, it's when we were talking about the harder or the schedule lightening up ahead, we said that before the Portland trip actually, and,
I know.
But I'm actually going to spin this positively. Like I think this team knows more about itself today
for sure
than they did then, so as to not get taken advantage of by a Portland Trailblazers team, provided they're able to kind of like flush last night out and Ant's able to get back back to some semblance of normalcy. I do think there could be a balancing of sorts, even if it feels in the way we're talking about this right now like it's a big problem. I think it's a big macro problem for sure. But it's a macro problem they signed up for with the trade, and this was a very possible outcome of it. So we will see, man. You want to do some prize picks to wrap this up?
Flex Friday. Go and go in the promos tab of prize picks and opt in. And I believe depending on certain levels of accounts that you can have up to a $35 kind of protected play where if you lose, you get $35 in credits. So what do you like?
I was just looking at wasn't following the NFL at large as much this week just because it's week 18, fantasy's over or whatever. But I was just looking at like the Sam Darnold and Jared Goff lines. Like Darnold is more or less than 34.5 passing attempts and Goff is more or less than 34 passing attempts. Both of those guys have been doing that recently. Like I think Darnold is 3 of the 5 last weeks maybe that he's gone over that. And Jared Goff has had more than that in 4 of the last 5, and it just went up to to 35 as I'm recording this for Goff there. But I don't know. I see this to be a game where it's like it's hard for me to see the Vikings game, this Vikings Lions game, being like 13-9. I think they both end up like kind of needing to let it rip. So those are my 2 from Vikings Lions on Sunday.
I love those. Again, I can't fix the team right now, the Wolves. I can't fix the starting line, but I can fix this. And again, if you use that $35 protected play, which means you're going to get your money back, I say we go for it.
Sure.
And the way we start by going for it is Justin Jefferson, more than 99.5 receiving yards. It's a demon. Justin Jefferson in 4 games in his career at Ford Field, 133 yards, 182 yards, 223 yards, 192 yards. He's going to get 100 receiving yards on Sunday Night Football, and it's a demon, so you're getting extra points. So if you can find Justin Jefferson more than
demon it up. Yep.
And then you did Sam Darnold, so I would probably go maybe Aaron Jones under or less than rushing yards. I don't even know what the number is.
Try and pick the game script of that.
Just trying to pick the game script. I kind of watched that Lions 49ers game, and it was a throw fest. I think both teams are going to be really aggressive. Again, this is game 282, kind of like the Timberwolves had game 82. This is for everything. But yeah, you do those 4 things. Aaron Jones less than rushing yards, Justin Jefferson more than receiving yards, and then you expect Goff and Darnold to just let it rip. What is that?
If you put the 35 in, right, that'll be the protected play. That's to win $262.50.
That's like 1 ticket to a Target Center right now. But again, shout out to Prize Picks again. Today's a really good day. They're doing
do it on Friday.
Do it today. Opt in. Make sure you go to the promos tab. And then again, if you're trying to get some funds on there, use Dane's promo code. And then again, shout out to Prize Picks for supporting the pod.
Yep, prizepicks.com, prizepicks app. Promo code is Dane. If you haven't created an account, they will, when you make your first account and do a $5 wager, they will credit your account with $50. Again, it's, and for those of you who, I mean, many of you I know are already playing, do check out that promotions tab right up. There's the board, my lineups promotions right up at the top there. Yeah, check that out. There's often time, you know, if you're playing often, you don't want to take advantage of these opportunities there, and PrizePicks does a good job of throwing that out there for you. So, as fantasy is done and the playoffs are coming, I'm sure you and I will be texting about PrizePicks as the NFL playoffs roll around.
Big game coming up. Timberwolves.
Against
Hometown Minute against my Detroit Pistons.
Go ahead.
Well, I just think it's going to be a fascinating game. I mean, obviously, there's no Jaden Ivey in that one, which is a super bummer because he was playing really well. But the Pistons are a fun team. They're kind of that. We're not a bottom feeder. They play space. Like Cade Cunningham has a bunch of shooters around him, Malik Beasley being one of them. So I'm just kind of curious to see now the Wolves, after 15 straight games against good teams, how they kind of pick themselves up on the road, which I think they're just a better road team right now. I just think Finch has that bunker mentality. So I'm excited to watch that. And then some feisty teams like the Pelicans, the Magic, and the Grizzlies. So the schedule doesn't lighten up, but it does provide us different ways, I think, to analyze this team.
Yeah. And to that point specifically, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, it felt like even before like what Ant said in the locker room, it was like we sat down for that press conference with Finch, like right because we do Finch right before we go to the locker room. I'm sitting there, and John's asking questions, ever asking questions. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I've seen this game before. It's the same stuff, Mm-hmm. It's just really the same stuff, and I think that in and of itself might be reason for change. It's just like running into different issues, I think would be good, right? Not even like absolving themselves of all the issues. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, so I don't know. Hopefully Malik Beasley and the Pistons provide that.
And again, I think we don't like doing standing stuff, but 2.5 games out of the 4 seed, 1.5 games out of the 11 seed. That's what the West is this year. The West is not, as heavy at the top. I mean, the West is a bunch of teams trying to figure it out. The Phoenix Suns wake up this morning, they're 11th in the West.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think a new challenge. This team needs new things almost every day just to try to figure out where they're at and what they've learned from that Portland trip. And I think it does start against a team that is undermanned now in Detroit, but, still plays really good basketball. And the winner or loser of that game, I'm going to be happy.
Which is because the Wolves get the Pistons' first-round pick if the Pistons make the playoffs this year. So, if all goes to hell with the Wolves here.
We'll be doing Tankathon draft talk in April.
We'll just break it down.
They're going to figure it out.
A Pistons-Hornets game in March. That'd be
all right, that's enough.
All right, he's Kyle Theige. You follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. Thank you for going a little bit longer today. Next up on the pod will be Jace on Monday, and we'll talk about what goes down in Detroit on Saturday. I will not be at that game. I'll be watching it from home, but Jason and I will watch it from afar and come back to talk to you there. And actually, shout out Jace. Like that quote from Ant, doesn't happen without Jason. Some of the subsequent questions too came from Chris there. I just think they did a good job of understanding Ant had a vein he wanted to open there. Even if we can disagree with what Ant was thinking there, it was good to get Ant's kind of full thoughts on that. And it was really enlightening to me. I mean, I know in a bad way, but really enlightening as to like where this is at right now, and frankly, what needs to change to get it back right. Because we were talking to Nas, and Nas is like, a lot of season left. I'm like, oh my God, I've heard this like 14 different times. There is 50 games left in the year. Like there is an opportunity to right the ship, to some degree, and they have to do that. They have to do that right now because it is bigger than this season. And it is, you just said like Phoenix can found themselves this morning in the 11th seed. Like you mess around for like a couple more weeks, like you're there too, if you're the Wolves. So like there's and to the Wolves' credit, and I think this actually is a good Finch coaching thing, they do very much flush stuff away and they get back together and they go do so. Let's see if they can do it again. Let's see if they can do that because that's what this team needs right now.
This team has this team has good reporters. they do a really good job, and it includes you and Britt and John. So good work last night, because we got 84 minutes essentially off of quotes that wouldn't have existed if this team was on the road in November. So
Yeah. Again, he's Kyle Theige. Follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Until Monday with Jace.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Grinning hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.